What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Desai Guys Football Forum. I am one of your co-hosts, Summer Desai, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, and he's also wearing green, Mr. Tad Desai. So we had
Not planned, not coordinated.
Not planned at all. Not planned at all.
We texted
Tad,
each other this morning.
I want to say that we had a good playoff weekend last weekend, but honestly, oh geez, only 2 of those games was actually close. The others were surprisingly blowouts. Like, I know we got our picks correct for the most part. I think we went 5-1, both of us. I think we both anticipated that the Cowboys were possibly going to have the upper hand with the crucial Jimmy G turnover, which it almost happened, but thankfully my Niners held on.
Several times it almost happened.
Exactly. I was texting you frantically to that. I was like, here's the crucial
turnover. There was a
turnover.
reason I wasn't responding.
So thankfully my Niners held on. They have moved on to the next round, and yeah, hopefully we will see some better games in this weekend's playoff action. We're going to break it all down for you with the Saturday games first in this episode. Later on, we'll drop our thoughts and predictions for the Sunday's slate of action. So we're going to start, as mentioned, with Saturday's action here. So we got the first game on the books. We got the number 4 seed Cincinnati Bengals traveling to play the rested Tennessee Titans, earning that number 1 seed. They get the week off bye. That will be happening at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, and that will be on NBC and Peacock, just in case you're not near TV. Stream it on Peacock.
Still the worst streaming name ever. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, it is what it is. That they base it off their logo, but hey, we're not here to talk about.
I get why it's called that. It's still a terrible name.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But let's put the naming
like CBS
of
calling their streaming service The Eye.
Yeah, honestly, that one actually, I like that one a little bit.
No, that makes it sound like some Sauron knockoff. How's that for a nerd joke?
But yeah, let's put naming of streaming services aside and let's actually discuss the games. Tad, I'll pass it to you here first. What do you think is going to happen, and just what's your prediction for this game between the Bengals and the Titans?
Yeah, so I think that last week's episode, I was afraid that last week's episode was going to be a little boring because, like you said, we both went 5-1 because for the most part, we picked the favorites and the favorites ended up winning. So I was, excited that our very first game that we're talking about this weekend, I'm going the underdog, baby. I think Cincinnati's got this. And here's why. Is it me, or does it feel, by the way, just so people understand, Cincinnati is the underdog. They are plus 3.5. Sorry, I'm looking at updated lines right now because I want to make sure with injury news that it hasn't changed since I took my notes. So yeah, so Cincinnati currently listed 3.5 favorites. That could change, especially with the Trey Hendrickson news. We'll get into that in a bit. But I like Cincinnati here because is it me, or is Tennessee one of the most overrated 1 seeds we've seen in a while? Is that just like a me feeling because I hate them, or?
That's fair that you have a little bit of
look
extra
at the helmet
hate
in my
there.
background. Like, it's just I gotta own it.
But honestly, like, I felt like they played well, but just part of me just feels like they're kind of frauds as the number 1 seed.
Right.
So we'll see what happens in this game. I still I think they're going to be very competitive. But spoiler alert, I actually like the Bengals in this game too. But I'll let you finish your take.
Well, I agree with the fraud thing, right? Because it's kind of hard to get a proper gauge on Tennessee because they do have some really good, impressive wins. Because I was looking over their schedule, I was making notes, and I was like, oh, they won over the Chiefs. Well, that had to be one of the games where Tyreek Hill or one of their big players was out. No, they had Mahomes, they had Hill. The Chiefs seemingly were fully healthy that game. So they beat the Chiefs. Cap's about to make a guest appearance, by the way. Hey, buddy. You got thoughts on the game? No? All right. See you, bud. So there's the guest appearance right there. So they have good wins over the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Rams. All very impressive wins. I'm not going to take anything away from the Titans with those wins. But you look at their losses as well. They have some rough losses on their schedule.
If I remember correctly, they split with the Texans.
Yeah. So the Texans are one of the losses. The Jets are another one. And then they also lost to the Steelers. And I know people are going to go, well, the Steelers were a playoff team. They were barely a playoff team when we saw that. Yeah, okay. Seriously. So let's not act like the Steelers are all gung-ho here. So first off, you lose to 2 teams who have picks in the top 10 of the draft now. That's solidified. So it's weird. They had this like kind of flip off. And yeah, I know they dealt with a lot of COVID stuff and they dealt with a lot of injuries, but I just don't quite think that they're as good as most number one seeds are. And here's what I think the key to the game is. It's the Titans pass rush, right? Because if Joe Burrow has time to set up that long, him to Chase connection, him to Higgins connection, hell, even him to Boyd connection, Titans are screwed. Okay. So I'm really worried about, I'm worried about if the Titans pass rush can really pressure Burrow enough to make a difference. Because like I said, I think that's the X factor here. Tennessee is tied for 9th in the league in this season with 43 sacks. So their pass rush is good. It's not great, but it's good. But I think that on the flip side of it, like I said, we would touch on this now. Trey Hendrickson, he cleared just today a recording, cleared concussion protocol. He is going to play in this game. So I think that the Cincinnati defense is going to give Tannehill and that kind of inconsistent Tennessee Titans offense enough trouble that the high-powered Cincinnati offense is they're going to outlast them. I think it's going to be a sprinting match, and they just have more stamina because they have more guys. And look, here's some famous last words. I know everyone's getting hyped up for, the return of Derrick Henry. Here's my deal. Everyone's saying, okay, he's coming back with all this rest. I'm saying, I think he's coming back with all this rust. Because I got a Bleacher Report alert today saying a quote from, I believe it was Arthur Smith, but I'm not totally sure. It was a quote from someone from the Tennessee organization saying he's holding up well in physical contact in practice. That is not inspiring a whole lot of confidence to me. That's sounding like, hey, he's not getting hurt again. And it's just like, great. Is he ready for the game? Because, again, I know that's a lot of rust to be coming off of, like 6 to 8 weeks at this point. But, I mean, just kind of like tossing you in the deep end with the playoff game, that's a big ask, even of a guy like Derrick Henry. Especially when you have to remember he's going to be the focus of that Cincinnati defense, which is no joke. Because Ryan Tannehill and that passing offense is hugely inconsistent. So, I'm a little, again, watch him run for like 200 yards now. But I'm a little concerned about, how Derrick Henry is going to react coming back from such a long absence. So, all this to say, I think that Tennessee is going to put up a good fight. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any, stretch of the imagination. My final score prediction, Cincinnati 35, Tennessee 27. So it's going to be like kind of close, but one of those games where it's pretty decided as, in the last like 4 minutes.
So you got a little bit higher scoring than I do, but I'll get to my score prediction a little bit later. So first off, I want to say that if Arthur Smith is still talking about the Titans, I think that's a bad move on.
Yeah, my bad.
It's probably Mike Vrabel. You're probably the guy that you're probably thinking about, or Todd Downing, who is the offensive coordinator right now. So
it's 11:30 in Dallas right now. It was a very long day. It was just.
It's all good. It's all good. So. The Bengals just won their first playoff game in over 30 years, and, now they have the sort of monumental task of taking down the number one seed in the AFC, but I think, like we sort of already alluded to earlier, both me and Tad just don't feel like it's as monumental of a task. I think the Bengals should have a sort of easier time getting past the Titans, even though they had the 1 week bye. They're rested up. They could heal up guys. They have a little bit of extra week preparation, whatever it is. Just this team just doesn't strike me as a team that I would fear in the AFC, even though they are the number one seed. And exactly like I said, I think the biggest advantage that Cincinnati has is that passing attack. You look at Tennessee, they allowed the 8th most passing yards in the NFL during the regular season, and they're playing the offense that scored the 7th, or not scored, but they accumulated the 7th most passing yards on offense. So this is really like a matchup strength for the Bengals and a big weakness for the Titans. The one thing, exactly like you said, though, is that if they can get pressure on Joe Burrow, at times during the Raiders game last weekend in the wild card round, the Raiders were able to generate pressure, and that's what stalled a lot of drives to the Bengals. That's what kept that game a little closer than the Bengals probably wanted it to be, and that's obviously why the Raiders, had that final drive where they possibly could have won it. But then, unfortunately, Derek Carr threw that interception at the very end of the game, obviously sealed the game for them. But if that ends up being the case against the Titans, they have a little bit better defenders, up front, especially with Jeffrey Simmons in that front. He's an absolute beast on that front line. So if he can get after it, cause some disruption, cause some other guys to come in, get after Joe Burrow, that's obviously going to be a huge problem. And I agree with you with Derrick Henry. I think it could be very similar to what we saw with the Rams because Cam Akers came back in that
like
game.
That. Yep, that's a great example.
Cam Akers came back in that game, and that was obviously his first game from rupturing the Achilles, or was it the ACL? It was pretty much like a
I think that's why his
injury.
return was so surprising because, like, honestly, Achilles is almost worse than ACL.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those season-ending injuries where you're just like, okay, this guy's not going to play again for a long time, and here he is back after 5.5 months.
You know what happens to your calf muscle when you tear your Achilles? It rolls up like one of those old, like, fashion window curtains. Like, literally, your entire calf muscle rolls up. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it is not a fun time at all, but it's surprising the advancements that we have in the medical industry now and just recovery of players. And so he's able to play, but he looked pretty good, but obviously they were mixing in some Sonny Michel. They were mixing in some other guys too, so it wasn't just him. And I see the same thing happening with Derrick Henry. We'll see some Deontay Foreman. We'll see some other guys as well to ease in that load. And just, I think he'll be okay, but just he's not going to be that dominant force that a lot of people are expecting him.
Here's one thing for like 300 yards on us.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But here's one thing that's interesting, Ted. I don't know if you saw this note, but Mike Vrabel, since he took over head coaching for the Tennessee Titans, when he's had at least 9 days or more to prepare for his next game, he is undefeated. He is 8-0. Now, the one thing I will say, the caveat is that they've all been regular season games. So this is the first time that he's had this much preparation going into a playoff game. It's a whole different animal, obviously. So we'll see if that record stays true or whether he'll suffer his first loss after having, 2 weeks of preparation here. We talked about Derrick Henry, but the Titans' running game is still really, really good because Derrick Henry went down week 8. Since week 9, Tennessee has still been averaging 135.8 rushing yards per game. So they didn't even need Derrick Henry to be that good. They still have a really good rushing offense in that sense. So we'll see if that's an issue, but the Titans haven't come across a good run defense that Cincinnati has, the 5th-ranked rushing defense in total yards allowed over the course of the regular season. So the big thing here that I think is the X factor is that if the Bengals can contain that rushing attack and obviously prevent the pressure getting to Joe Burrow on the offensive side of the ball, I think they have a really good chance because like we talked about pretty much all season during the fantasy season, Ryan Tannehill just did not have a good season. If they could force Ryan Tannehill to sort of beat them in this type of game, advantage Cincinnati, and I really like them here. So like I said earlier, I like the Bengals in this game. I like them to pull the upset. They'll move on to the AFC Championship game. I got a little bit of a lower scoring affair. I got it being 30 for the Bengals, 24 for the Titans. I think it'll be a little bit slower.
A little bit. Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll start out a little bit slow. I think it'll be very defensive heavy. Then all of a sudden, the adjustments will be made. The Bengals will be able to go out there and score some points on the board.
Also, I need to point this out. Of the Titans' 5 losses this season, 3 of them came since week 9.
There you go. That's something.
So they're running the ball well, but even if they are, without that Derrick Henry threat,
That's fair. That's very fair.
How about that for analysis? Yeah. Hey.
So we'll see what happens, but both of us like the Bengals to come out of that, out of Tennessee with another victory, move on to the AFC Championship round. All right, let's get into the next game here. This is going to be fun. We got my Niners, the number 6.
I got you on a timer.
Yeah, please do, because you need to reel me in for sure. You got the number 6 49ers traveling to Green Bay to play the number 1 seed, the Green Bay Packers. That is happening at 5:15 Pacific time, 8:15 Eastern time. That is happening on Fox. This is the first game that we talked about, the Bengals-Titans. That's the only game this weekend that has not been a rematch during the regular season. All the other 3 games have been rematches during the regular season. So this is one of them. They played each other, the Packers and the Niners, back all the way in week 3. I believe it was on Sunday Night Football, if I remember correctly. This is the infamous game where it was pretty back and forth, and the Niners were able to score late in the game, but they gave Aaron Rodgers 38 seconds, and you don't want to give a guy like that enough to that sort of time to sort of put together a game-winning drive, which is exactly what he did. Long pass to Devontae Adams, few more drives of small minimal gains, game-winning field goal by Mason Crosby. They ended up winning that game 28-24, if I remember correctly.
That was also before Mason Crosby got the yips.
Yeah, there was that game against Cincinnati where that was, oh my Lord, that game against Cincinnati. I don't remember that one. It was
and he kept going.
Both kickers missing
all season. He's been like very inconsistent. It's weird.
Yeah, it was insane. So here's the key thing, though. They didn't play since week 3. So that's like practically a whole lot of time. Both of these teams are a lot different, especially the 49ers. Like, I mean, Deebo Samuel did not have his greatest game against the Packers, but since then, he's absolutely become like the main point of this offense. Like, I mean, he's throwing touchdowns, he's catching touchdowns, he's rushing for touchdowns. Like, I mean, I don't think the Packers are ready for this type of player because they weren't prepared for that sort of, utilization by a player back when they played in week 3. It's a little bit more of a balanced attack. We saw Trey Sermon in that game. We're not seeing Trey Sermon on Saturday. I can assure you of that. This is going to be very interesting because, once again, I think it just sort of hits on the same factor, which we talked about with the Dallas Cowboys. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the key factor because, like I said, when he threw that interception against the Cowboys way late in the game, the Cowboys had a chance to come back in that game. There's obviously later in that drive, Dak Prescott ran in for that rushing touchdown. Niners were able to eat up a lot of clock, but then there's a couple delay of game penalties. They had to punt the ball. There's obviously, the infamous quarterback draw, which led to the no play sort of thing. So they kind of lucked out on that one. Also, the Dallas Cowboys have 14 penalties in that game. So Green Bay Packers are a lot more of a buttoned-up team, so the Niners have to be really on top of their game. But here's the one thing that I think could favor them. They know how to run the ball, and the Packers, unfortunately, are not good at stopping the run. So if the Niners can play the type of game that they're used to playing, especially in previous playoff matches against the Packers, we all remember the infamous NFC Championship game from 2019 when Raheem Mostert had a record-setting day, 4 touchdowns, 250-plus rushing yards. I think Jimmy Garoppolo threw the ball 8 times total in that game, which is an NFC Championship record. So, yeah, if they can play that type of game, that would be excellent for the Niners to pull out the win, but I'm pretty sure the Packers are expecting that. You can't count against Aaron Rodgers. I mean, this guy is just playing at an MVP level.
I mean, unless you're COVID.
Possibly. But just he's playing at such a sensational level. Obviously, he's up for, possibly the MVP nomination this year. He'll get the nominee. We'll wait to see, obviously, if he's actually going to win the award. But also the big thing is just the Niners are not going to be able to stop Devontae Adams. Like, he is just, his connection with Aaron Rodgers is just on such a different level that's just like, you let him get his, you need to stop everything else. It's very much like in basketball when, teams are playing against LeBron or James Harden when he was with the Rockets or Kevin Durant when he was with the Thunder. It's like, he's going to get his points. You need to prevent everybody else from scoring because that's the way you can sort of win.
I'm sorry. Are you saying Kevin Durant is no longer good?
Well, Kevin Durant is definitely still good. Okay, he's injured right now. He's injured, but I'm talking about like prime Kevin Durant when he was with the Thunder. It was like,
I just thought we were talking to a bitter Warriors fan here. Like, he's no good anymore.
No. He's still sensational. Like, there's no doubt about that. But I'm just saying, you have that type of player that's like, you let him get the stats that he wants. You just need to do a better job of doing everything else to prevent them. Because in that game in week 3, he went off for 12 receptions, 1 touchdown, and 132 receiving yards. Niners were able to still stay in that game. So, the big thing here is that in the losses that the Packers have suffered during the regular season, they forced 0 turnovers. So the big thing kind of already brought up earlier, if Jimmy Garoppolo can control the ball, obviously the team can prevent any turnovers as well. That increases their chances of winning that game. But the big thing is just all this week, he's still dealing with that thumb issue, and now he's dealing with a sprained shoulder as well, all in his throwing hand. He's gritting it out. It's looking like he's trending towards playing, but we'll have to see what happens during that game if he's starting to show signs, because we saw it in the second half of that Cowboys game. He was just looking a little bit inaccurate. They mentioned that in the press conference. That's like, this is part of the reason why he was sort of suffering a little bit. So that's going to be a key thing. But I'm picking the upset here. I know it's a little bit of a homer pick, but I like the upset here. I think, it'll continue to trend here. They'll be able to run the ball really well. I think this defensive line is playing a lot better compared to when they played in week 3. I think they'll be able to get pressure on Aaron Rodgers, put him in sticky situation sort of thing. So even though they'll have a pretty good game, I still like the Niners to come on top. It'll be a close game. I got the Niners winning 27-24 over the Packers.
Dude. That's not a little bit of a homer pick. That's a massive homer pick. You literally, you took all my points of why the Packers are going to win and said them for me. But yet you're still saying the 49ers are going to win. It's incredible. Right. It's incredible homer. Honestly, I'm not even, I truly mean this. You are a better fan than I am. Like, that's why everyone's texting me when the Colts blew it against the Jags, and we're just like, how upset are you? I'm like, I was upset, but I'm not like, irrationally angry. They're like, how could you not be? I'm like, because we always lose in Jacksonville, and it always happens. And they're just like, really? I'm like, yeah, we haven't won there since like 2013 or 2012, something like that. I was just like, whatever. Like, I totally saw this coming. I didn't see all the rest of the bull crap coming. Brandon Staley learned how to call a timeout. God, I can't wait till we have Stephen Hagelin back on here so I can yell at him for that. But I mean, you made all my points for me. Like okay. Before we even get to Garoppolo's injuries, how many yards did he have in the Cowboys game? 166.
That was actually, I think he had over 200, but it wasn't that much over 200.
Okay, all right. So playoff record, right?
Probably.
So my whole thing is you guys are winning despite Jimmy Garoppolo. And this is besides the fact that something you failed to mention, the thumb injury, which is very important, the shoulder injury, both of them, notice how I'm pointing on the same arm. Both of them
I said it was a throwing arm. I said it was the throwing arm. Yeah.
Both of them, right arm. That's huge.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that he almost cost you that game multiple times.
That's true.
Multiple times. 3 of those text messages you sent me were damning Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's 100% accurate.
So, no, like that's the whole thing of like, oh, hey, we can win this if Jimmy G doesn't see. Even Cap's getting in on this. Is we can win this despite Jimmy G. That is a huge despite. Okay, so but look. Before we even get into that, I need to just go. I'm not even a Cowboys fan. I just need to go into a slight rant here. I'm sorry because I'm gonna be a little rough on the Niners here. You guys only won that game because Mike McCarthy is a shit coach. Okay. And you brought up with the penalties. So it's the penalties. It's that final drive that, of course, is getting all the media attention. They talk about first take and stuff. Here's the biggest sign that you guys won that just because they didn't know how to properly play against you. Cedric Wilson had twice as many targets as CeeDee Lamb.
You know what's actually funny is that all the catches that CeeDee Lamb got, with the exception of the one that he finally got in the fourth quarter, they got called back because of penalty.
I call this. I think I call this on the podcast. This is when the Cowboys hired Mike McCarthy. I'm like, this is going to, like, they're going to make the playoffs because they're that talented, but they're never going to go far in the playoffs because he is just a terrible, terrible coach.
No, that's fair.
And Matt LaFleur, I think he is riding on Aaron Rodgers' coattails, but I still think LaFleur is a competent coach, which is more than I can say from Mike McCarthy. I'm very scared that I'm living in Dallas saying all this right now. So if anything happens to me, this is why. But I really do honestly believe that is you guys just had a good first round matchup. Now, this isn't to say you don't have a talented squad. It's just you guys don't have quite enough of a complete squad yet. And so here's the stat that really convinced me, like, okay, the Packers got this, right? Packers, you already mentioned, they very rarely turn over the ball. So their season turnover margin was plus 13. So for every turnover they had, I think this is the way math works, but basically they had 13 more takeaways than they gave the ball away.
Yeah, correct.
The 49ers turnover margin is -4. Not terrible, admittedly, but still not great. You always want to be in the plus there. Now, this is the stat that actually popped out to me. When the Packers force a turnover, and they're 8th in takeaways this season, by the way, so they're forcing a fair amount of takeovers. Matt LaFleur is 11-0.
No, that's fair, and I brought that up. That
if
in
Jimmy
their
Garoppolo
losses,
turns the ball over,
yep,
you guys are screwed.
Yeah, and I said that in all of their losses that the Packers have suffered this season, they failed to record a turnover on defense. So that's the big thing there.
Well,
so yeah, if we can
again, that's not this season stats. Those are the stats over the last 2 seasons, right? This is the second year as Packers coach.
2019, 2020, and 2021. So this is his 3rd year.
Freaking pandemic just like erased an entire year from my memory. But no, my entire point is I think if Jimmy, and that's an if. I'm saying if, for me personally, I believe it's when Jimmy Garoppolo turns the ball over at least once, you know the Packers are good. So again, I know I'm kind of repeating myself with the Cincinnati game, but I could see this turning into a sprint because like what you said is their run defense is so weak that maybe the 49ers can stay in this game, but the Packers are just too good. They're too good. And with a trio of edge rushers like Rashawn Gary, who I know is kind of stuck with that bust label after a very disappointing rookie season, but really he's turned into a pretty, I'm not going to say like he's one of the best underrated pass rushers in the game. No. But he's a solid player. Okay. Rashawn Gary's a solid player. He has Darius Smith and Preston Smith, the Smiths on the outside. I could see the game playing well, them containing the run enough to make this not a close game. So sorry, buddy. I think this is going to be, it's going to be an entertaining game at least, but I'm seeing Packers 31, 49ers 17.
That's fair. That's fair. Like I said, the Packers are a very strong team. They're a very convincing number one seed compared to the Titans in the AFC side. And so I could very much see the Packers winning this game, but just I think that the Niners, they turned it around enough and just they're a completely different team than what the Packers saw earlier on that I think it'll be tougher for them to pull out an easy victory. I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing a win, like I'm predicting them to win 27-24, but like very similar to what we talked about with Bills Patriots.
Do it. Do it.
But very similar to what we predicted with Bills Patriots, like it could go in either direction. I think both these teams are very competitive. But yeah, so I don't disagree with you at all that very much the Packers could absolutely blow us out. But I like our chance in this one.
I don't think 31-17 is a blowout.
I consider that a little bit of a blowout. That's a 2-score game.
Yeah, I consider a blowout like, wow, that was now if that it's like 31-3 in the fourth quarter going in, and then you guys score like 2 trash time, that's a blowout. But
no, 100%.
Context.
For sure. But yeah, I like the Niners to stay competitive.
We'll put that on Twitter. 31-17 blowout, yes or no?
All right. We'll put that on Twitter. So I like the Niners. I think they're going to pull off the upset, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers just, are just too much for the Niners to handle. So those are the 2 games that we have for Saturday. Should be a good game action. I don't know about that Cincinnati game, but I really am looking forward to that Niners-Packers game. Not just as a Niners fan, but I just think that's one of the better games this weekend. We'll see how they both turn out. Obviously, you can find out about our thoughts with the Sunday's game. That video should be coming later on our YouTube channel. Best way you can find out is subscribe to our YouTube channel and our individual playlists on the LAFB Network YouTube channel. Also, follow us on Twitter. We got the ticker down below. We got all the handles there. You got my personal handle, Desai23. You got Tad's Desai94. Got the show handle, Desai Guys. Let us know your thoughts about this weekend's matchups. Who do you think's going to win? Same thing with that playoff game prediction that Tad talked about during last weekend. We're going to continue that into this weekend. So drop your score predictions. The closer you are, we'll send you a prize of some sort. We're figuring that all out. But yeah, make sure you give us our score predictions.
Before we were recording the show, Emma and I were going over our score predictions, being like, okay, that's kind of close. That was a little close. So we are keeping track of this. So
that's very true.
But the only way you guys are going to, be able to participate in those prizes is if you get started this weekend the latest. If you just jump in on the, championship games or the Super Bowl, maybe you'll get a smaller prize, but if you want like that big prize, you got to start participating this weekend.
100%. So make sure you interact with us on Twitter, drop your score predictions, let us know what you think about this weekend's games. But yeah, to everybody that's, listening to us on our podcast, who's watching our videos, who's subscribed to us, obviously, who gave us a good rating on our podcast. I mean, just anything and everything in between, guys. We really just can't thank you guys enough.
As always, guys, thanks for watching and listening.